So I guess the first thing you need to know is that knives come in all different price points, all different shapes, all different sizes, and what's good for me is not necessarily good for you, but what's good for you is not necessarily good for me. So you need to take into consideration what your budget is, what your uses are, and what kind of knives you're going to need. So I'm going to introduce you to 3 different types of knife sets. This is block number 1. This is by Calphalon. You guys can see that. This is my everyday in the kitchen use it set that I've had for years and years. I'll give you an introduction to that in a minute. I also have a new block set that was a gift from last year from a friend named Steve. Thank you, Steve, for these knives. I love them as well. These are Chicago Cutlery. Can you guys see that? Chicago Cutlery. And then setting these two aside, I also have my professional knives, which I take for catering gigs and things like that. And these are by Global, and I'll get into those in a little bit. So let's have an introduction to different types of knives. So we're going to start with the Chicago Cutlery, the Calphalon here, and I'll show you what's in the block here. So in the block, we have the basic chef's knife. I believe this is about an 8-inch chef's knives. We also have the steel that comes with that for honing and straightening out your tines on the barbs of the blade. Forgive my terminology. Also in here, I have a Santoku 5-inch by Calphalon, and that is the Japanese style as well. In here is also a boning knife with serrations here on the top. That's so you guys can see it. Serrations here, boning knife. And then my personal favorite knife, there is a, what is this? It is a 6-inch general utility knife, as they call it. This is my favorite knife. There is a cheese knife, which go into more later on. And then there is a tiny little paring knife. You guys can see that there. Also in the block, I have a really cheap and cheesy bread knife. This is like a 99-cent knife, and it is great because it is serrated. It is very flexible, which is what I like because you can do different things with that. And if this breaks, I can throw it away and get another one. And also a pair of utility scissors. So let's talk about these knives, and I'll push them all away here, and then we'll come back to each one individually as I put them back in the block. Okay, so let's talk about the scissors first of all. I don't know about you, but I use scissors all the time. These things are great. They have like a serrated thing here for bottle caps. You can twist and turn with bottle caps, things that are tight. The blades are generally pretty sharp. They also have some minor little serrations here, so those work well. I used utility knives, utility scissors all the time, and I like these. They're cheap, they're cheesy, and I can wash them really easily. So let's put those back in here. Let's talk about the honing steel. Not everybody knows what to do with this. Basically what happens is when you have a knife and it has a blade, and we'll say your blade is like this, and it's nice and sharp, it's just sharpened by a professional. They are here, and as you use your knife, it does what they call feathering, whereas these little tiny minuscule edges here at the tip of the knife start to fray apart like this. And what the honing does is you basically are pushing those little microscopic pieces back in line, and you're keeping your blade sharper for longer. That's what this is for. This is not for sharpening, this is just for honing and keeping all those little tiny pieces of metal lined back up. It makes a huge difference. As I talked about, the cheap and cheesy bread knife, like I said, this does not come as part of this set, but I use this thing all the time to cut through your rustic breads or weird stuff or plastic. I mean, this thing will cut through anything. It's got serrations on it. It doesn't have to be sharpened. And like I said, if it ever wears out, gets dull, or I don't like it, or I also take this to parties. So this one, if it gets lost, I don't care. I can get another one for $1. So that's that. Okay, so let's talk about this cheese knife first of all. You guys can see here in the video, it has serrations. It's not super duper sharp, but it has serrations for chopping through hard cheeses and things like that. It also has this funky fork tip on it, and what that's for is once you cut a piece of cheese, you can stab your piece of cheese and pick it up off of the tray or things like that. This is a good utility knife for lots of different things, and besides cheese. Personally, I don't use it much for anything else behind that, and I definitely don't use the forked tine at the end for much else other than that. I guess if you were doing a 1980s microwave meal, you could poke the top of it really quick with this. Alright, so that's the cheese knife. Now, let's talk about these two categories of knives. This is a paring knife, and this is a general utility knife. The general utility knife is my favorite piece out of this whole set. It holds its blade really well. It is the right size. I do everything from chicken to vegetables with this thing. Personally, when I hold the chef's knife for a long time, my hands get tired, and I like this. It's funny because I'm such a big guy, but this is the knife that I like. I think that's the one. If I was a lady in the 1800s, I think I would keep that one in my stocking to stab people. Paring knife, good for fruits, vegetables, small things, cutting, even you know, when you're butchering meat for small things. This one is okay. I'll show you on the other set. I like the other one better. This has a straight blade on it, and it's so hard to keep this one sharp for some reason. I think it's because it's the one that everybody grabs out of the block and they want to use it first, and so it just gets the dullest the fastest. This one, I think people are intimidated by it because it's so long they don't want to use it, so I tend to be the one that uses this one. By the way, I let everybody use my knives. That's what they're here for. The special set I keep aside, and the Chicago set I keep aside in the kitchen. But these are my general knives. So this is my favorite one. We'll put that back in the block. And the paring knife. And now we have this one. This is a boning knife. They call it a boning knife. It goes around. It's a small blade. It can go around the meat bones. It can go through chicken. It can do all different things. The reason I don't like this one so much is it has a serration at the top, which is really weird to me, and I feel like it never quite gets clean. I mean, I scrub it and I scrub it. It's still got some stuff in here. I just don't use this knife that much. I don't like it. I don't like the serrations. It tears things. It has a little bit of a blade here, but it's okay. It's there. It's good for like cutting string and you know, getting ink cartridges out, things like that. All right. Let's talk about the main two in here. Beyond my utility knife, the chef's knife is probably the biggest one you're going to use. It has a nice heavy tane on it back here. It has a good weight to it. The back of your knife, remember, it can be used for lots of different things. Cracking coconuts, breaking up bones, smashing garlic on the side, whatever else. I mean, I've had this thing for years. I probably had this for 6 or 7 years now, and it doesn't look any worse for wear other than a few sharpening marks. The best thing about a chef's knife is the curve of the blade. You see that it has this curve here. That is, when you have it down on a work surface, it rolls back and forth. And that's the whole point of a chef's knife with the curve, is that when it is on the cutting board, it rolls back and forth. You can stab, you can chop, you can bash, you can do a lot of different things. People don't realize how much you can actually use a chef's knife for, and being heavy, you know, it's almost like your kitchen hammer. So that's that. The most modern knife in the American kitchen, that seems, is everybody wants to have a santoku, which is a Japanese style knife. If you notice, it has more of a flat blade. It does have a little bit of a roll to it, so when it's on a cutting board it can roll. But the biggest advantage in this is it has these cutouts. You see them along here? Try to get in the light. There you go. The little cutouts. And what those do is they allow air to go between what you're trying to cut. So as you're trying to cut through something, let's say you cut between my fingers here, as you're trying to cut through something, it allows the air to move in there, and things like cucumbers or squash or whatever else don't stick as much to the blade, so you can cut and pull out quite quickly. I think that's why this is so good and why so many people are liking it these days. I probably use this as my second or third go-to in the collection in this set. It is very similar. I'm trying to find the utility knife. It's very similar in length to the utility knife. So I think it's probably a good length for me and for most hands. I don't know. It just seems awkward to me. I would almost rather use this one. Although this one has the divots, this is a smaller blade, so it comes out easier. Okay, so that's this entire block. I'm switching over to the Chicago Cutlery now, and in this is a large chef's knife. It also has a super sharp serrated knife, which is really great. Since getting this set, this is probably one of my go-tos for bread and such instead of the other one. It does make a difference. It is much sharper. It's almost scary sharp. This also does have a steel. And then we go in length here. It has a utility knife, which to me is quite valuable, as I just told you how much I love those. It also has a regular paring knife, which stays pretty darn sharp. I think because when I have newbies in my kitchen, I offer them the other knives, just so I have some nice sharp ones. And then I go to this ones as my secondary, or for people who know what they're doing so they don't cut themselves. And then my new favorite weapon is this bird's beak paring knife that comes in this set. And let me tell you, this thing is amazing. This curve makes all the difference for dealing with fruits and vegetables that are curved or small, peaches, pears, apples, that kind of stuff. And let me tell you, this sucker is sharp. I love it. Also in this set is a bunch of steak knives. A bunch of steak knives that are just here. Don't serve a lot of steak in my house that they need a knife, but they are here and they are quite sharp. So it also has 8 of those. And then I also used one of the holes that's here on top, and I have a tiny pair of scissors. These are great for string and other things that are around the kitchen. I don't know what to say. I just love these little tiny ones. They do a great job for nipping the corners off of things like zip top bags and stuff like that. It's a pair of Fiskars. They came as a set, and this is the last one. I don't even know where the other ones are, but these things are nice and sharp, and they're really good for small tasks. So that would be the Chicago Cutlery set. Now I have for you my professional grade global set of knives here. These are the ones I used to carry with me catering all the time. To professional catering gigs where accuracy and looking professional is all the good stuff. In my whites, wearing this on my hip, basically in here, the way this opens, comes undone with double Velcro, and then it rolls out. Voila. Okay, so let me just give you a little roll down what's in here. First of all, we have the large blade with a slight curve. I'm not sure what this one is called. It's just I guess it's a chef's knife, but it's more for like butchering and meat and things like that. I've also got the standard chef knife, which is here, and then I've got a bread knife and a utility knife. I've got a steel, and up here we have a paring knife, which is a small paring knife, about 4 or 5 inches, and then I have a zester. So I'll just go in reverse order here. First of all is the zester. You guys can see that. Where is it? There it is. It just has little holes at the tip, and you put this on the fruit and you just pull it across, and you get nice little zesting juliennes off of there. It's quite sharp. I don't even know if it has a specific name. It's by Chantal. And it's got a nice curve in the handle, which actually makes it easier to use, and it's got a little hanging thing. I just keep this in here because it's very useful. Let's see, the paring knife is here. I'm trying to keep it so you guys can see it. There you go. Paring knife is very sharp, standard use for all the different kind of stuff. The steel, same principle as the other steels. The utility knife, again, I like having a small knife. This is the one I probably use the most. This sucker, when you go to a professional events and you're cutting up giant loaves of bread or other kinds of stuff, this thing is very, very sharp. You can see the serrations there. I love this one. The difference about the globals are the handles. They've got really nice handles, so when it's in your hand, you know, you really feel like you're holding on to it. It's got a nice curve here, so your index finger can go around it, and you really do feel like you're holding a weapon. I've also been known to use this one backwards, cutting through cake, and then using it for serving. Just in emergencies, it does serve really well. This one is a little bit flexible, but not much. It's quite rigid. It really is a weapon to be dealt with. Okay, then we have our basic chef's knife here. This one is much thinner, much lighter than the ones in the block. I would not be knocking things around with this as much. A little bit of bashing is fine for the backside, but not as much. It's very much thinner. It's very much more flexible, and it's very sharp. I keep these things are razor sharp. I have to say these are the me only knives. I don't share these ones, but if you are thinking about being a professional, something to think about. And also the long one here, this came with the long knife. I don't use this one very much. It's here. It's a good secondary knife. I just don't use it very much. But it is here, and it is nice and sharp. Okay, so that's the professional set. Okay, you guys, I have some fruits here that I'm doing in another video, so I thought I would cut these up on camera for you guys. We have the Gaya melon, which is this big sphere here. We have an Asian pear, also called as a single Korean pear here. And we also have the Korean melon. So what a perfect opportunity to show off some knife skills here. So why don't we start with the Gaya melon, which is quite large, and as you can see, would not be great with a paring knife. So I have here a chef's knife. Chef's knife is a perfect opportunity because this will cut all the way through this in one hack, and you guys can see it is so sharp. Look at that, just right through. And look at that melon. Now we also have our little Korean melon here, and I'm not quite sure if it should go in half this way or this way. I don't know, for some reason I feel like going with the lines, so let's check it out. Gets through very soft. I'm trying to feel the texture. And there we go. Check that out. And then of course we have our Asian pear here. Take the sticker off. I'm just going to slice this like you would a regular pear. Ooh, it's quite tough. You can see there. Alright, so in our knife department here, let's set aside that, and I'm just going to do a nice cut on this. So using your chef knife, this is the perfect opportunity for this. See how large it is? It goes across it, and this is the perfect opportunity to cut down. And then I'm just going to cut this into wedges. This melon is super ripe. Now, if you wanted to, you could also use your paring knife. And here's a perfect opportunity to just cut the rind off in one small piece. There's the advantages of a small knife. The rind is off in one piece. You can also go this direction, just cutting along the rind. This is the perfect opportunity for your knife as well. This melon is super ripe, and just be careful at the tip. You can also use your paring knife the other direction, which is to turn it over and pull it this way, which would be my preferred method. You can take it off in a couple pieces. You can take off one, turn it around, and take off the other. And you have your piece. So now we have this little guy, and this is a perfect opportunity to use your paring knife as well. I would tend to carve this skin off so I don't have to do it at the table. just using your paring knife, you can go right underneath the skin and take it right off this piece. Just keep on turning it and pulling your knife through. Easy peasy. I guess you could use a peeler, but this is what the paring knife is really for, is just to take off small amounts like this. You can imagine trying to do this with a large knife. It would not be great. You can also see that this is the reason I like this one. Since my hands are big enough to hold it, I could also use this in the same way. It's just a little more clumsy. But for me, it's great. Because I can also use a slight sawing motion with the long blade. And then as you see, a great piece. Same blade that I like in my hand, which is a combination of these two. And now I can simply slice this and get really precise pieces. Notice how I put the blade right up against my fingertips and slice through, and you can see that the precision is great. And look at that, all one piece. We can put that on our plate. Now, the Asian pear, same issue. I would cut this in half again, and then I would use my paring knife. You see the circle? Just take out the slightest bit of core, both sides, and then cut down through it. And this is really where the bird's eye, or the bird's beak, helps. You can see you've taken the absolute minimum amount while leaving the whole pear intact. One more time. This one has hardly anything. You can simply use the tip, slice down through it, turn it around, slice down through it again. Maybe just a bit more. And we've taken the absolute minimum. And then, again, depending on your application, I love this knife. Set it down and you can get super thin, nice slices. That long blade really helps with precision. And look, nice fan. Just because I'm feeling like this melon is jealous, we'll do a little bit more. I think I would cut this in half. And then peel it because it's more sturdy. Again, this melon is really, really ripe, so I'm trying really hard not to squish it, which is why I maybe look a little odd. Okay, there we go. And now again, you can do some really precise cutting if you want to make a nice salad. And look at that. So, there you go.